So on Wednesday, you listened to 90 minutes, raw and uncensored, of the incredible career of Canadian journalist Victor Malarick. Malarick is a journalist who doesn't fit the mold, who lives according to a high standard of the truth, no matter what it costs him. His career as a journalist has been exposing corruption, injustice, cruelty, and suffering. Malarick is a survivor, beginning as a child in the youth welfare system, then building a career as a journalist in ways that didn't make him popular with the authorities. One day, Malarick saw a brief press release that the RCMP had participated in a major drug bust in Thailand that would end the career of a major importer of drugs into Canada and protect the country. It seemed odd to Malarick that the RCMP issued such a short press release for such a big story. Also, why was the RCMP involved in a drug bust outside its legal jurisdiction? Why not bust the big drug importers when they try to enter Canada and enter RCMP legal jurisdiction? It was just odd. It seemed like a contradiction. Malarick told us how he went to Thailand to interview this major drug importer in prison, but he wasn't allowed to enter the prison to interview the criminal. He found out the RCMP had asked the Thai police not to let him into the prison to interview the man. That made Malarick suspicious. He knew a high-ranking Thai police official and got this official to let him interview the drug king in the Thai prison. Initially, Malarick was suspicious of the man he met in prison. The man told him an incredible story that was hard to believe. But Malarick searched for the truth. In his investigation, Malarick revealed that the RCMP spent $1 million to incite Canadian Alain Olivier to commit the crime of drug traffic in Thailand so that the RCMP could take credit for a major drug bust. Olivier, outside the Canadian justice system, was sentenced to life in prison in Thailand. He spent 8.5 grueling, dehumanizing years in the Bang Kwang prison in Thailand. He survived. Then he was returned to Canada on an extradition treaty to be released a few months later to try to put his life back together. Olivier was paid and threatened by RCMP undercover officers to commit the crime that they wanted to convict him of to get credit for it. The story that Olivier was a major drug importer was a fiction concocted by an informant that the RCMP was paying, and a fiction concocted by the RCMP. It all happened undercover and in Thailand, so it would be hard for anyone to discover the truth. The media in Canada would be expected to follow what official sources told them. Thailand was apparently out of reach of Canadian journalists. Under these conditions, you could create whatever fiction you wanted. Well, Malarick's story sparked a government inquiry into how the RCMP managed the case. The government inquiry released a public report on the case that was sanitized. Someone leaked to Malarick the real and unsanitized version of the 177-page government report that seriously reprimanded the RCMP for tampering with justice. The public didn't have the true report of the government inquiry until Malarick released it while Olivier was still in prison in Thailand. Malarick's last chapter of his book on reporting, called Gut Instinct, ends without knowing that Olivier would be returned to Canada eventually. The hidden government report said that the RCMP, quote, created the crime and then directed their efforts to ensuring that Olivier would be convicted of the crime they created. Alain Olivier was the victim. They played upon his drug addiction. They promised him money and they promised him drugs. They bought him a plane ticket so that he could go to Thailand, end quote. The report says that the RCMP undercover officers pretended to be drug traffickers and faked a murder on the charter boat where Olivier worked in order to threaten Olivier into going to Thailand to be arrested in a sting operation that they set up. The report says, quote, they directed their efforts to ensure that he would be arrested and jailed in Thailand because they didn't have any evidence against him in Canada, end quote. This is a story that, quoting from the report, quote, brings the administration of justice into disrepute, end quote. The way the RCMP treated Olivier, the report said, quote, violated all notions of fair play and decency and demonstrated blatant disregard for the qualities and humaneness which all of us share, end quote. But as Malarick told us, the RCMP and the Government Commission saw Olivier as expendable. If someone is using drugs, that person is expendable. What mattered was protecting the reputation of the RCMP so that Canadians wouldn't know the truth. It would damage Canadians' sense of themselves to know that the government is capable of doing this. It was better that Canadians not know the truth. It didn't matter if the life of one unimportant person was destroyed, who had no power to fight back and wouldn't be believed. Today, you have 1 hour and 15 minutes to listen to Alain Olivier's side of the story. Olivier is a survivor. 8.5 years in a Thai prison is an incredible tale of survival. How did Olivier do that? How did Olivier survive being set up by the police force of his own country? His story is continued through the book he wrote called Good Luck Frenchie, published in 2020. I just got a copy a few days ago. I have to say that Olivier is a prolific writer. His book is 509 pages. The book was turned into a movie called Target Number One. In the film, Malarick is played by Josh Hartnett, and Olivier is played by Antoine Olivier Pilon. Pilon's performance in the film doesn't have the charm of Olivier. You should know that Olivier has a website and a number of projects he's working on now. Even after Malarick's writing, after the book Good Luck Frenchie, and after the film Target Number One, this story is not finished yet. Olivier hasn't got the full public vindication he deserves of the decades-old injustice done to him. He continues to tell his story and to push for justice. The story of Olivier is a tale of a survivor. How did Olivier survive years in the Bang Kwang prison? How did he survive believing that he had been sentenced to death, then sentenced to life in prison? For over 8 years, would he ever have hope that he would be released someday? And who would fight to release someone like him? How did he survive the sense that the Canadian justice system turned against him? How can you fight that? How was Olivier able to return to Canada to build a life for himself? Who is he today? And how have his life experiences shaped the person he is? Please listen to Alain Olivier.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're fine. Thanks for having me on your program like this. It's very touching to see young people being interested in case like this and to pursue basically the same thing as I've been doing for over 30 years now. If you count on being a reporter at some point, you have to realize right now the importance of the truth. Myself, I was sentenced to death because RCMP members lied about me while I was before court in Bangkok. And I was sentenced to death, actually. And my death sentence was commuted to life sentence on the last day of my trial because I agreed to plead guilty. I was sentenced to death in the morning at noon, actually. And at around 1:30 in the afternoon, I was called back in the courtroom by the Thai court judge, and they proposed me to plead guilty, and that way I wouldn't have to face the death penalty, which forced me in some ways to plead guilty, and I ended up being sentenced to 100 years in Thailand in a Thai prison. And it's not Canada. It's probably the first time for any of you guys being there and talking to someone who's been sentenced to death before and did time in a Thai prison. And like some of my students in Ottawa at Carleton University, some people felt a little bit on at ease at first to ask me questions because they didn't know exactly what to ask me. But feel free to ask me any question you have. And with regard to the conditions of the prison over there, as you know for sure, it's a third world country, so you cannot expect to have any living conditions that can be called living conditions over there. Standards are way below of everything that we have here in prison. Over there, we didn't have any toilet, we didn't have any shower, we were sleeping on the concrete floor. And here, if you see the picture here on my book, I got 40 pounds of irons around my ankles. This picture was taken by RCMP member at my trial in Bangkok, and he was telling me that it was for their souvenir album over there at the RCMP. And the fact to end up sentenced to death in Thailand, foremost when it's an operation that was all engineered and financed by the RCMP, is something that is not supposed to happen. Canada is against the death penalty, first of all, and has been for decades. And as such, how the RCMP could use Canadian taxpayers' money to finance an operation over there, which, as they admitted, was meant to have me subjected to the death penalty. Those two things cannot go together. You cannot use Canadian money to finance an operation like this if you know that someone will be sentenced to death later on. And in the same way with the case of Benjamin Burns, who was wanted in the United States, he faced execution over there. Here, the minister had to give a ministerial order and get into an agreement with the United States to ensure that Burns wouldn't be executed if Canada extradited him to United States for his trial over there where he was wanted for murder. And there are other cases like this in Canada that made jurisprudence before the Supreme Court. But even myself, I never thought that something like this could happen to me. First of all, at the beginning of the operation, I was mistaken for someone else who had the same date of birth as I had. But that person had 11 criminal convictions for drugs, violence, and weapons and stuff like that. And that's RCMP civil agent that gave them the information, uh, gave them my name and my date of birth, was a paid informant that was paid $125,000 tax-free to work for the RCMP. And his job was to find targets, and he was getting paid by the targets. And higher was the target in the hierarchy of drug dealings and criminal organization, and the more he was getting paid for it. In my case, I was classified as a target 1A, which is the highest rank a dealer can get in Canada from the RCMP. It's a little bit like if you give 1A code to Pablo Escobar, to Kunsa in Burma, who's the drug lord who was running all the operation for heroin back in the 80s. But I was classified as that by the RCMP, and I wasn't a drug dealer. I was a drug user. In 1980, late 86 and early 87, I went to travel to Southeastern Asia, and I got addicted to heroin in a matter of time. And by the time I got back home, I was severely hooked on heroin. This is when I met that civil agent who was a boat charter business operator, and he invited me to go on his boat and to become his partner. But he went on to tell the RCMP that I was running all the heroin market on the West Coast, and none of this was true. And when they checked the name, my last name and the date of birth, another criminal record came out. And from then on, a week after that, like Sean said, they made a murder scenario on the boat I worked on to make me believe that there were people working for the organized crime. And they told me that I was now part of their scam. I couldn't get out of it because now I had become like witness of a murder. I even had manipulated evidence of a murder because when I went back on my boat after these guys came back with it, there was only one guy on the boat, and when I looked inside the boat, I found empty bullets of 9 millimeters and splashes of blood here and there. And I knew these people had left without fishing canes. So, and the one guy was missing. So right away, I freaked out and I went to see Glenn Barry, that civil agent, which I thought was my friend by then. And he says, no, no, that you want it or not, you're part of it. And this is where it started. And for 18 months after that, they pursue me all across Canada to coerce me into going to Thailand for them to find them a source of heroin. And after 18 months, and after being threatened, and even Glenn Barry told me that if I wasn't cooperating, that they would go after my family as well. And I was already out on heroin, and I decided it's enough. And at that point, they promised me 10% of all the amount of heroin that they were purchasing over there. They wanted to have at the beginning 10 kilos, which would have mean a kilo of pure heroin for me. Finally, it settled down for 5 kilos in Thailand. It still meant 500 grams of it, pure heroin for me, which was to be delivered at home in Vancouver without me doing anything. And that was the part of the deal. So I ended up agreeing to go over there, and I didn't have any contact over there except tuk-tuk drivers. That's all I had. But in their own words, I was a major heroin importer and trafficker in Canada. I never did any of these things. But this is what the RCMP made headquarter believe in Ottawa in order to get the authorization to go to Thailand. Because according to them, and as they said here in court, their mandate is to go up the chain as far as they can. Yes, perhaps it is, but you cannot take a Canadian citizen to another country to have him executed in order to achieve your goal, to get at the source of heroin. You cannot do that. Unfortunately for me, despite everything that happened, Victor Madarek showed up at the prison over there after I had been in the prison maybe a couple of weeks at that point. And like Sean said, there was a lot of distrust because I didn't want to believe anyone anymore. And I felt that most of the people in the media at some point, because I knew what the RCMP, I started to know what the RCMP were saying about me. And I didn't have any chance. That was the word of a junkie against the word of the RCMP. So they make me look bad. And more than that, at the time of the transaction in Chiang Mai, one RCMP member got killed. He got shot in the head. And here, when they came back, there was no autopsy. They took him straight to Richmond funeral homes, and he was cremated against the will of the family. And the RCMP said that Corporal Derek Flanagan fell to the ground and broke his neck, and that none of the RCMP members had guns. They had guns. I know. I was there. I heard the shot being fired, and I was arrested by RCMP member as well. And when I tried to escape from him, he ordered a Thai police to shoot me. It's all proven. It's all on record. It's all being entered into court record, and the court here said that there was no problem with that, to have our CMP officer arresting me overseas and ordering the Thai police to shoot me. And when I started telling that old story to Malarek when I was at the first prison prior to my sentencing, I could see his skepticism. You got a junkie sitting in front of probably the most notorious reporter in Canada who's waiting to hear your story, and you start telling him about murder scenario and being promised such amount of drug to collaborate, talk. I explained to him everything that I could in the short time that we had, and I could see skepticism. He was shaking his head. He didn't believe me. He didn't believe me, and even him, he admitted it, and he says, "I will check it out, nevertheless." And when he arrived in Canada and he started to make phone calls and look for information, he realized that I was telling the truth. And his first article in the Globe and Mail, this is where is the importance as a reporter to be resilient and persevere. And to not go for anything short of the facts and the truth as Malarek did. That's why he was at the top of his profession for so many years, because there was nobody like him. He's been a great inspiration for me throughout the years, even. But had not been for Victor Malarek, there wouldn't have been a commission, the RCMP Public Commission in Ottawa, which was led by Paul McEwen as chief investigator on that case. But unfortunately for McEwen, his report was shelved because it was too critical of the RCMP. So instead, to have a 176 pages report like Paul McEwen had written, he was from Nanaimo actually. He died last year. He was a criminal lawyer, and his report was simply hidden because it was too critical. And what the government did at the Public Complaint Commission is that they took the last 40 pages that were very critical of the RCMP and they just removed them. So there was nothing left. And through that, I mean, they made their way. But more than that, had it not been for Malarek, no one would have been able to expose the RCMP Complaint Commission for what it was. Because at the time, that was the beginning of the commission in 88 that was created. And in 89, May 89, they started an inquiry in this case. And the commission was led, the executive director of the commission was an ex-RCMP deputy commissioner. And that's because of Victor Malarek resilience at asking questions that he finally find out and expose that. So imagine that you have an ex-deputy RCMP commissioner leading the commission that is mandated to investigate RCMP members. It doesn't make sense. It was always a matter of conflict of interest, case after case. And when McEwen came up with his interim report, before it became the final report, Bertrand Giroux, who was the executive director and ex-RCMP deputy commissioner, decided to remove all of it, everything that was bad for the RCMP. And more than that, as we found out through all the documents that I got over the years, is that his best friend was Frank Palmer, and Frank Palmer was the head of Operation Deception, which led to my sentencing to death in Thailand. They were both best friends. So from the start, it was very, very political, and only reporters with a lot of courage and could do what Malarek did. And I think that for any of you who wish to become a reporter or even a lawyer, it's the same thing to be a lawyer. Everything is a matter of research. Never settle for anything short than the truth. That's important. And you'll see how proud you'll be of yourself. Because when you expose matter of related to the truth, or whatever, if it's human rights, corruption, and stuff like that, you always, in some ways, your work will help many people to get through what they are going through. If you expose the truth, that will make people believe that, yes, it's possible still today to have something else than fake news, because for the last few years, it's often the term that many people, young people, and even older people are referring the media to. And I don't agree with that, because I know many reporters and they have very good intentions, and they have a good sense of ethic when they are working. The only problem is, like we discussed, me and Sean, was that many of the newspaper at the top, many of the director of the news that will be published in newspaper, they don't always agree to have a reporter going on an inquiry for a month, 2 months, 3 months. They want to have a new story every 2-3 days, so you cannot spend long time investigating long case like Victor did for so many years. But Victor had a way to talk to his boss. I think it's getting harder also, perhaps for financial reasons. Sometimes they don't send always people on the field as it should be, ready to investigate. And foremost, when it's political like this, like my case. Like I said, one RCMP officer got killed in Thailand, and most likely was shot by his partner as he was trying to break the back window of a truck. A bullet went off. You can see all the information on my website at alainolivier.ca. I even prepared a document of 174 pages of RCMP perjuries and false statement, whatever you want to name it, just about Flanagan's death. And here in Canada, the judge said there was no evidence of that. So yeah, it's frustrating, but it was a little bit the same all the way through the time that I was in Thailand. Every time I tried to get help, uh, it was the circle of the wagon, as we say in Ottawa. One minister would receive my letters, he would pass it on to another one until they do the whole circle, and then it would start all over again because it was so political. First of all, what would have happened if the RCMP had admitted that Flanagan had been shot? Here they said that he fell down and broke his neck. And that was my word from then on against the RCMP. And there was nobody to investigate, to do an autopsy on, because the body was cremated upon arrival against the will of the family. These are all factors when I'm talking about gathering facts as a reporter or even as a lawyer. You need to put everything together. If you go on my website to look at the analysis of RCMP Flanagan's death, you will see what it's all about when you do a research on a certain subject. And even if I would have wanted to do all this in Thailand, all the time that I was in prison, I have until I got McEwen's report that I received in the black envelope with no return address, I had no way to know what was happening with my case in Canada. And at some point, I realized that the McEwen's report had been covered up. And I filed through access of information to get all the documentation from the PCC, the RCMP Public Complaint Commission. It took 3 years before I got the box, and the commissioner had to have access information, had to intervene to make sure I got all the information. And I received a big, big box, but the documents were expurgated at 90%. They were all blacked out. So it didn't help me a lot, but at least I could have a sense of what went on in Operation Deception. And then I got McEwen's report, and I wrote right away to Malarek after that to tell him, look, I got this report. And Malarek, meanwhile, had received the same report. So we felt that it was probably Paul McEwen who sent it to him and sent the copy to me, because otherwise no one would have known the truth. And due to the effort of Victor Malarek and his last chapter, Seeds of Deception, in his book, Got Instinct, it forced Ottawa to bring me back home after 8.5 years. But believe me, life in prison over there, when you live 100 people in one cell, you're chained like I was, sleeping on a concrete floor. The only toilet you have is a hole in the middle of the cell, and you're surrounded by people. That's all it is. And you try to sleep. You have to sleep on your side because there's no place, no room enough to sleep on your back. I had to go through that for 8.5 years. And if you go on my website, you will see several pictures that were taken inside the prison. And like Sean said before, when you go inside the prison to talk to a prisoner, you will have much more emotion and much more chance to have the real story. In the same way as when we did the movie over there, the young actor who played my role upon his arrival in Thailand, because we shot for over a month in an old prison over there, he asked my movie director to wear real shackles around his ankle for the first 3 days until the blood was pissing off. No kidding. He wanted to know it felt like to play my role. And I said, if you don't wear chains, you won't know. And he did for the first 3 days of the shooting over there. And he was sending me email. He says, I cannot believe this. And I had to wear those chains for 42 months myself. It's 3.5 years that I had to wear chains. So that gives you an idea of the conditions over there. Like I said, it was a third world country. At Bamguan Central Prison, after my sentencing, we were like 8,500 prisoner on a 80-acre compound. And it's a lot of people because half those 80 acres were gardens where they were growing vegetables, and they had a pig farm to have pigs so that they would feed all the prisoners. That was, if ever you see Midnight Express, it's about the color of the prison that we had over there in Thailand. It's nothing funny, and human rights are non-existent, and they are over there to break you. And myself, fortunately, I'm pretty hard-headed. I'm a little bit like my dad was, and I think that's what made the difference. And foremost, I was so angry after being arrested and finding out that these people who had chased me across Canada for 18 months were RCMP members. After threatening me for 18 months and making the murder scenario and everything, finding out that these guys were RCMP members were mind blowing. And I was so angry when I got arrested and I had to go to withdrawal on top of that because I was using a lot of heroin at the time. And I've been sick up in my arrival in prison. You wouldn't believe. I felt like sitting bare naked on an iceberg for a couple of weeks, and I got sick about 3 months altogether over there until I started feeling better. And I was kept incommunicado. The only thing that helped me when I arrived in prison is because I had made national news over there. And as you will see, even the Thai newspaper, The Nation, and the Bangkok Post are talking about the death of Derek Flanagan, the RCMP member who got killed over there. All of them said that he got shot. On television, they said that he got shot. On radio in Thailand, they said that he got shot. And after 3 days, a big general came out and said that the reporters who had said that were wrong, that there was no gunshot fired that the night of my arrest, and that was the end of the story. Basically, General Bumroom, that person Merrick was telling you, Sean, about the other day, that big guy, general who told him that you gave him the authorization to come to see me. He's the guy, basically, as far as I'm concerned, who started the term fake news. Because back then in '89, he's the one who said that everything that has been reported about the case in Thailand was false. So I decided to fight. And when I arrived in Thailand at the prison, in the first prison, when they took me to the blacksmith to put the irons on me, this is when I got, like what I say, it's not even a matter of rage. I felt humiliated. Felt humiliated to be there chained like a dog. I had animals on my life. I never chained anything. I had dogs. I never had to chain my dogs. And all of a sudden, I ended up having 20 pounds of my ankles 24/7. And when I was going to court, they were adding another 20 pounds of chains. You will see the pictures on my website. And that got me so angry that instead to giving up, I decided that I would use the rage I had in me to move forward and to change that in a positive manner. It got easier in time as I got cleaned up and after I stopped using heroin. But living in these conditions, it was a matter of survival every day anyway. If you read my book, Good Luck Frenchie, I'm talking about few events that I've been through, and my book is, every time you will read a passage, a paragraph or whatever, you will have the picture of what it felt like over there, how I felt like about it. And it was like walking on a battlefield every day. Half the prison population were murderers. Some of them were there for having killed whole family, and including the dogs. Some people were there doing 12 life sentences for murder. I mean, they had killed. And in Thailand, in prison, they put everyone together once you're sentenced. Whatever, if it's pedophile, murderer, drug dealers, you name it, everyone is put in the same basket and has to live together. And the prison is basically run by what they call blue shirts. These are prisoner or trustees that the guard choose, and they give them a nice blue uniform with a yellow cord and a stick. And basically, the prison is ran by blue shirt. And every time something happened, but they're gonna go tell the guard, and the guard will come out with their fucking bamboo stick and start beating up people. The first thing I saw up in my arrival in Bambat, just minutes before they put shackles on me, was to see 6 Thai guys naked on the pavement and being beaten almost to pulp by some crazy guard who I used to call skinhead because he was totally bald. That guy was coming out straight from a Stephen King novel. I mean, he was a monster, and he was even having basically an orgasm every time that he would beat someone. And I had to see people being beat up on a daily basis. I've seen people dying on a daily basis. If it wasn't from being beat up, it could be from overdose, because over there in Thailand, once you're sentenced and you go to the big prison, there is plenty of heroin. I mean, it gets inside the prison by the kilos, in the same way as it happened in many South American prison where cocaine gets in the prison by the kilos. And so there was a lot of drugs. And when I got sentenced and arrived in Bamguan, I started using again because I didn't see, even if I wanted to move forward after being sentenced to death, something broke a little bit in me. And, in order to escape the reality that I, I had to live on a daily basis, upon arrival at Bamguan, I started using heroin, and it went on like this until I got out from confinement in '92. And for the first 3.5 years, not the first 3.5 years, but in Bamguan for the first 2 years, I was whacking myself like all the other prisoners, foreign prisoners that were with me. And in my book, you're gonna love, if there's so much about inside the prison, because I didn't write this like a reporter would do. You have all the characters that were with me, prisoners that were with me, with their real name. And even if they were prisoners, they became my family. And mostly one of them, Carrie Delaney, is dead now due to cancer. But I wouldn't be there without everything that this guy did for me, in the same way as he wouldn't have got out of Bamguan if I had not been there to save his life, like I'm telling in the book. I don't want to sell all the punches, but I've been through so much. And what is the worst, perhaps, it's never knowing what will happen. I'll always be waiting for news. I'll always waiting for this and for that. And the only thing that kept me myself alive inside the prison, I guess, was the letters that I received on. After some time, I stopped. For some time at the beginning, for the first couple of years, I was kept incommunicado when I started receiving letters from home. And my mother would write me letters, 10, 12 pages. I would write 20 pages letter, just like I did to Matarek. Well, you just have to ask him. I was sending him 20 pages letters, all handwritten very neatly. And that was my exit writing. And the fact that my mom was writing me every letter was like feeding me with hope. She was giving me hope. She knew that hope was about the only thing that could get me to go forward, and to go forward, even if it's small news, it's small this coming from home, even if it's about the Canadian winning the Stanley Cup in '93, it cheered me up. I mean, that was different. But my mom always found a way to send me hope in each and every of her letters, because she knew that when you're going through misery, like I've been through in Thailand, that hope is perhaps the only thing that can really help you to move forward and to go through whatever things that you have to witness on a daily basis. And when I stopped using heroin, when I got out from confinement after 128 days in a concrete cage on the fourth floor with, let's say, an average temperature of over 50 degrees Celsius, I stopped using heroin because the appeal court had confirmed that I wouldn't be executed, and that my life sentence would be staying as it was at 100 years. So at some point, I told myself, "Boof, you won't be shot. I said, you got a reason to live." So I stopped using heroin when I got out of confinement. First of all, because I saw another of my friend dying from an overdose, a good friend of mine, and I saw life getting out of him as he was dying. I tried to revive him. There was nothing to do, and it shook me up. It shook me up, and some old Chinese guy I was talking a lot with told me that I didn't have to do heroin because the same thing would happen to me. I would die from an overdose at some point. And I went on to telling him, no, 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 heroin makes me strong. And he made me realize that was a pretty stupid comment from my part to say that heroin makes me strong. And I went down myself, and I asked my director to lock me up for a couple of weeks, not letting me out. And I went through another cold turkey, which was probably the worst cold turkey I've been through in all my life. I spent 40 days without any sleep, and I was sick for about 3 months. And I started training. As soon as I got over my cold turkey and withdrawal, I started training. I used to train a lot. I did martial art for about 10 years, all throughout the 70s. So, and I did all kinds of sport. I was pretty athletic, and I decided to start training. And by starting training, I started to clean up my body even more, and my brain started working much better also, because at some point by training, I was creating more dopamine in my brain, and I was able also to rebalance in some ways whatever it. Because when you use your brain, the big problem is that there's some part of your brain that are going to sleep. It's because you don't have any serotonin to go to these part of your brain. Serotonin is what conduct all the electricity and the channels through your brain to get everything working together. And by working out every day, but I started to get all this running again and eating tofu and vegetable every day. I had the protein I needed to work out, and at some point I was working out 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. But I needed more than that to be happy. Just go back a little bit when I was put the chains on me. To put it in few words, I stopped believing in God at that point, and it took an. I couldn't believe that whatever if God existed or not, that He could put someone through such miseries, just like all the others with me. And rather than stick to religion as such, I was more into finding ways to help people on a daily basis, because I was a foreigner. I could teach them French, I could teach them some English, I could do many things. I even had a good background in medicine. My mother worked in medicine for many years. So I tried to find myself little things on a daily basis that could alimentate, that could feed, that could feed me mentally and make me happy. So if I help a Thai guy, just like so many that I've seen who were sick, because I ended up being the doctor in my section the last few years. I was performing all kinds of things, stitches, from giving pills for this and that. We managed to do few things on our own without, because whether there was no real hospital. Once you go to the hospital over there in Bamguan, you're not getting out, you die there. So it's not the place you want to go. So I try to apply my skill and my knowledge to many things to help people. And every time I saw that I made someone happy, a Thai that made him smile because I help him out, or this is what fed me on a daily basis. I fed myself with this, and rather than feeding myself through prayers and stuff like this, I've seen people changing religion 3 4 times while they were waiting for their death sentence. Every time after a few months, they saw that Buddha wasn't answering their prayer. They went to Allah. Allah wouldn't answer their prayer. They went to Jesus. Jesus wouldn't answer their prayer. They went to something else. I've seen people losing it completely because they were so much doing introspection of themselves with regard to religion that everything has to be. It's because God wants this, that way. God wants this, that way. No, I don't think any God wants you to be chained and be facing the death penalty and it at any time on earth. So I'm more comfortable with principle of how could I say it? Just to do good deeds and feed myself with the happiness that I created on a daily basis. This is how I managed to go through all those years. It wasn't easy. I mean, when I've seen my friends of mine, I've seen many of them dying over there. If it wasn't from overdose, was from other illness. Even when we had the cholera pandemic inside the prison, I look at people dying all around me for days until the Red Cross came to give us vaccines. There's nothing you can do once you're over there. Same thing during the monsoon season when you end up walking in the prison with water up your waist because the river flooded across the street, the Jeffreya River. At some point, we had the water way above our waist all throughout the prison. I mean, and you have to live with that. You see spiders and snakes trying to swim everywhere, to find a dry spot. So it's a lot of experience to go through, but in the end, I made it through. And many people are asking me, "How did you make it through?" And often I will simply say it's perhaps because I have good genes. Probably had the genes of my dad because my dad was never sick or anything. But and I had his character also. My dad never gave up on anything. When he had something on his mind, he was going for it. And it's a little bit what got me through. And unfortunately, when Malarek published his book, he managed to talk with my mother. Uh, he talked to my mom in November '96, about 2 months after his book was released, and he told my mom, Madame Olivier, we have all the information and the evidence that your son is not guilty and everything. And she thanked him, and about a week later, she ended up in the hospital and she died. But she wrote me a birthday card just before passing away, and she put lipstick on and she kissed the card and she says, Alan, continue doing what you started and don't stop until you're done. And I think I owe it to my family. My dad told me the same in 2005 when he passed away in my heart. He said, finish what you started. And it's the same thing with you guys. If you end up in an endeavor as a reporter or as a lawyer, if you get into working on a story or a case, if you start something, go for it until the end. Don't stop midway. Because myself, I feel that you give so much time to fight like I did for 30 years on this case. It's a little bit like digging a tunnel for 30 years, and perhaps when it's left, it's maybe just that thick that I have to go through in the next few months to finally expose the truth. Because now I'm working on a documentary about Flanagan's death, which will touch only Flanagan's death and all the events surrounding his death in Thailand and all the lies, and also to expose all the corruption here before the court, where judges of the court allow the RCMP to lie about the death of their colleague without saying a word. Worse than that, the judges called me a liar. They said there was no evidence that the RCMP lied about their colleague, about the death of their colleague, Derek Flanagan. If so, how come do I have 174 pages of false statement, perjuries, and so on, just for an event that lasted about 5 minutes upon Flanagan's death? I got 174 pages of lies and perjuries and false statement emanating exclusively from the RCMP, and the judges said that there was no evidence that the RCMP lied. So it's frustrating, but I did not give up in the same way I didn't give up last year when the pandemic came at the same time that I was launching my book and the movie, and everything had to be postponed. Even so far, I was unable to do a launch for my book, Good Luck, Frenchie. It's only for the last week or so now that all the conditions allow people to go through cinemas and to go see live shows and stuff like that. So perhaps I will do a book launch on December 10 upon my birthday. And I think I mentioned that to you the other day, Sean, that I was born on December 10, and it's a little ironic in the sense that it's Human Rights Day on December 10 all throughout the world. The Universal Charter of Rights was signed on December 10. The Conventum Against Torture at the United Nations was signed on December 10. And to realize that I was born on such date is another thing that made me wonder sometime what life had in reserve for me. I mean, from the start, to be born on such date and to be fighting for the last 30 years over human rights and talking about the death penalty. But yeah, it's been a long journey, but you see, I'm here today because I decided to persevere. I decided that I would go through all this, and I will never stop for nothing short of the truth in this case, because I think all Canadians deserve the truth. All Canadian taxpayers against the death penalty foremost deserve the truth. And when you see judges allowing our CMP members to lie about the death of their colleague is one thing. But to call me a liar and saying that there was no evidence, that upset me a lot. And that's what I kind of find the rage that I had upon my arrest when I got the judgment from the appeal court. And the one who told me that at the appeal court was Richard Wagner, who happens to be a good friend of the trial judge with whom he had been working for 12 years at the same law firm. And I asked for his recusation in appeal. It was turned down. And as Justice Wagner at the appeal court was rendering his judgment in my case, he called me a liar about the events surrounding Flanagan's death. And my lawsuit was for $47,400,000 against the RCMP. And the judge, the Attorney General of Canada, while Justice Wagner was writing his judgment in my case, the Attorney General decided to promote Justice Wagner at the Supreme Court before he had rendered his decision in probably the most important and most controversial case about human rights that ever happened in the history of the justice system in Canada. And now he's Chief Supreme Court Justice. And I will never stop fighting as long as this guy is over there, because he doesn't deserve to be over there. If ever, just one point like this. Let's see. In their decision, they said that after a minutious scrutiny of all the evidence, there was no evidence the RCMP was lying. So obviously, they went through all the evidence. If they missed out on the evidence, that would signal another problem of integrity from the part of judges of the court who couldn't see all the evidence entered into court record about the death of a RCMP officer. They just decided to close their eyes. And that's frustrating. And just like I mentioned also to Sean when we talked a couple of days ago, I told him, just like I said to all my students, and just like I will tell you, fighting for the truth is not a sin, far from that. It's only a matter of common sense for any society, for any individual who wish to entertain the viability of its system, justice system for years to come and for generations to come. At 62 years old, on December 10th, I'll be 62. It's not even for me that I'm doing all this now. I'm doing it for your generation. I'm doing it for others, because myself, by the time this is all settled, because there will be a big petition coming out on the day of my birthday this year, petitioning the Minister of Justice to have a public inquiry in this case to find out why the RCMP lied about the death of their colleague, and but also to see what motivated judges of the court to close their eyes to all this. So it's a constant fight. I thought last year with the movie and the book that would give me an enormous stage. We're supposed to be in Paris, London, Toronto, Vancouver, and many other cities around the world where I could have had a chance to talk about my book, and boom, the pandemic came. Another deception. The operation was called deception anyway, so it wasn't another deception, but rather than complaining, I called Malarek and I told him, we're going to be going through this for at least 2-3 years for sure. And it's probably going to be more than that, maybe 4 or 5 years before it's all settled. But I didn't give up. Instead, I opened my computer and I wrote 1,200 pages this year. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I wrote 1,200 pages in French and English. This is the sequel of Good Luck, Frenchie. It's all about when I came out of prison and came back to Canada to file suit against the government. I got 1,200 pages down right now. And I want to use that to work on a teleseries as well with the people at Netflix or HBO. We will see down the line, but I will never give up because I feel it's important for the truth to really come out. So if you engage yourself at being reporters or lawyer or whatever, for years to come. Like I said earlier, don't settle for nothing short of the truth. In the same way, I will never settle for anything short than that, because I know that I will, the day I'll pass away, I don't want to be there and having regrets. Why haven't I done this or that? People are asking me, do you have regrets for those 30 years that you've been fighting for the truth and for human rights? It's very demanding. It took its toll even on my health at some point. But no, I don't think I had to do it. And more than that, since the movie came out, and many people went to get my book, and I received through my website, there's a place you can write me, and I hope you will take time to write me a few words when you go on my website, so I can get your email address and we can stay in touch. What I want is basically, like I said, justice has to be done. And it goes way beyond my own interest right now. Like I said, if the RCMP are allowed to lie about the death of one colleague and judges closing their eyes to this, I don't think our justice system is going in the proper way. And the big problem right now, to expose such story with corrupted judge in Canada, who would believe this? All the evidence are on my website. Even my website was hacked twice the last few months, and only the evidence related to Flanagan's death were removed from my website, nothing else. Who had interest to do that? The first time it took 3 weeks to repair my website, and the last time 5 weeks. I don't care. I don't get mad or anything. I just went on as I expected it. I even told all my friends. As soon as I opened up my website and all the information about Flanagan's death were put on, I told all my friends, I said, just count how many days it will take before I get hacked. And I did. I got hacked the day that we had the red carpet here in Montreal. And I got hacked after that at my birthday last December. And I just started laughing. And then it's so obvious. It's, to me anyway, it's someone in Ottawa who did this. Yeah, I even talk with top hackers here in Montreal who've been hired by big Japanese firms now and other government to work on, and they all told me that, Uncle Alan, no one in all the people they know who were top hackers in the country had interest to hack me, because they all respect me so much and they know the reason why I'm fighting for. And I figured that the fight that I'm leading for the last 30 years is an humble, is very an humble fight. It's a fight that I'm conducting for the good reason, and that reason is because the public deserve the truth. And as a reporter, for all of you, once you're gonna get out of the university, just keep that in mind and just think about Malarek, because I think he pretty much crank you up about what it feels like to be a real reporter in Canada. But the reporters like him don't exist anymore. I even talk with the Vancouver Sun and the Vancouver province, and I send them the analysis of RCMP Flanagan's death, and I asked them to retract some of the story that they said about me. None of them, radio, television, newspaper, none of them even dare acknowledging receipt of my communication to their attention. And that pisses me off, because it shows again, just like it happened in the 90s in Vancouver with Chris Rose and a few others at the Vancouver Sun, they were sleeping with the RCMP. It's hard to believe, but put that in your mind that somewhere in some newspaper they are pro-police, and if you're a junkie or a whore or whatever, you're on the other side of the line, you don't matter at all. Only RCMP matter. The words of the RCMP matters, and that angers me, because as Canadians, we deserve better than that from the media. So just put that in your mind. Never settle for nothing short of the truth. Wish even led Malarek to be fired by the CTV W5, and they had to give him a settlement last year because of that, because they wanted to keep him from coming out with a story that was very political. And this new boss, Gary Newman, told him, no, you cannot do that. And Victor told him, hey, fuck off. I will publish my story. So they fired him. And CTV had to give him a big settlement to make sure that it wouldn't go before the court and everything, because they were not entitled to fire him like he did. When he did the documentary on W5 with my case, we won the best documentary of the year at W5. And it's always, Malarek never waited or had any, how could I say it? He never worked to have people applauding and people giving him rewards. The only thing Malarek always wanted, in the same thing as he did in this case, it was for the truth to come out and to expose corruption and to help people who needed help, just like I did need his help. Had it not been for him and to force Ottawa to take me back to Canada, July 97, I would be there still. Perhaps I would have died over there. So it's special. We became good friends. And last year, when we were talking in Toronto during the red carpet, even if we had only 50 people, and here in Montreal as well, Malarek, we just said to all the people that were there, to all the media, that he was happy to have found a friend like me that had his resilience. And believe me, I had a hard time to swallow when he was saying this. I almost felt like crying for a long moment when he was talking about my resilience. And I hope all of you will take example, not of everything that I've been through in my life, but about my resilience to expose the truth. As Malarek's resilience to expose the truth. And every time you will be done completing a story, you'll be proud of yourself, because you will say, Adam left no stone unturned. I went for everything. I checked my facts. Everything is there. I'm happy. Don't settle for nothing short than that. And I'm going to see now. I'm going to ask you to ask me a few questions. I've talked for a long moment. I just want to see if you have any questions, whatever, if it's about the case about the prison over there, or because I could go on for hours like this. I'm not too sure. Just if you have any question you would like to ask me, but just go for it.
So you've talked about your arrest and your time in Thailand many times. Do you feel emotional talking about it? How do you feel talking about it?
Oh, but for me, I'm used to it after 30 years. Since I came back to Canada, I started giving lectures in universities in Ottawa. And it did help me a lot to deal with that. I don't have any problem talking about it. The only problem sometimes I may have talking about it, it's when it comes to my mom and her passing away, because when she passed away, I felt that I wasn't there for her. But I have to continue to live with this, because my only regret is I wasn't back home in time to tell her, thanks, mother, I love you for everything you've done. I will have to live all my life with that. And it's a hard thing when you cannot tell the people you love that you love them and you want to thank them for everything they did. It's something, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thinking about it. But for the rest, about prison condition, the prisons and everything, my biggest therapy has been to write. I don't need to go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. My work is there, and I got 1,200 pages in my computer. I'm now completing for the new book in the teleseries. So that's my exit. This is how I just move all the negative out of me. And when you're writing, if you don't have anyone to talk to, it's the best therapy that there is, because you don't just slow yourself until the lids start shaking like this. You have something on your mind, just put it on paper. You'll feel much better after that. Say, all right, I'm relieved that I've been able to just to get rid out of my mind. It's even if I put it on paper, and sometimes you can even read it again to see, yeah, I thought this, I thought that. And myself, I have little tricks like this to help me to with all that. And no, I don't have any complex or any shyness, or any shame about everything that happened to me. I'm the man that I am today because of everything that happened to me, and having regrets. I try to live my life without having regrets. I had plenty before, and now I'm trying to go forward and live with having regret as less as possible. Go ahead, buddy.
I have a question as well, actually.
And
Other than yourself, is there anyone else looking into Corporal Flanagan's death?
no, but now there's a director I'm working with for the documentary. I went to all the newspaper, including the CBC also, and the television, and all the reporters are afraid of this case because now we're talking about Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to participate in the cover-up of cover-up of the circumstances surrounding the death of RCMP Flanagan. And more than that, in my case here before the court, to ensure the truth wouldn't come out, the judge decided that my case was prescribed. Namely, it means in legal terms that I had to file suit while I was incarcerated in Thailand. 3 years, I had 3 years to file suit. And the judge here said that, okay, from 89 to 92, you were wearing chains, you were unable to file suit. But once your chains were removed, you were psychologically apt to file suit against the Canadian government and the RCMP. And yet, when you go about 6 months later to the Attorney General's file, they have letters over there saying that I would die inside the prison due to the prison living conditions. So yeah, I'm angry at many things because in Thailand I can understand I went through a kangaroo court, but here in Canada to see this happening, and now this is just to finish my answer to your question, to have reporters who will dare expose the truth, that will reach even the Chief Justice of Canada, Richard Wagner. Some people are not too keen to do that. First of all, some of them, their boss won't let them do this. Foremost at the CBC and Radio-Canada here, they're all predicting. I mean, they're getting all their financing from there. So it's pretty hard, but I'm not giving up. I know with the documentary that we'll be doing eventually in the next month about Flanagan's death, it will be a 3-part, 1 hour. That will be a series actually of three episodes of 1 hour that we're trying to do. That will be a special about Flanagan's death. And even in the movie, Target Number 1, the movie director came to my trial here, and he came for every day that the RCMP testified, and throughout my testimony for 3 months, he was there taking notes. And in the movie, he decided to put the version that he believed was true, that Flanagan got shot. And he put it in the movie. This is pretty much how the movie ended up. But no, the truth will come out, and I will even be counting on you guys to help me out in the months to come when the petition comes out, to make sure that you will circulate among all of you students, your friends at the university, and even at UBC and Fraser University, just like I'll be doing in Toronto and Ottawa, to have students of every department, whether if it's in social science, criminology, law, or whatever. I want every student to be part of that group that will push the Canadian government, the Minister of Justice, to open a public inquiry. Because it's like I said, it's way beyond my own concern and interest right now. It's a matter to provide you guys with a justice system that will be fair and honest to you, your kids in the future, and your grandkids. Because as it is, you won't get that. I'm the first example of this. More than that, at trial, the main witness, Glenn Howard Barry, was a civil agent working for the RCMP, that paid civil agent, the informant. He was a star witness at trial. He never showed up. We asked for a judgment by default. He was found responsible in 30 other cases. The court found the RCMP responsible of him as his action. Here, the court said, no, the RCMP is not responsible for him. And after that, you got RCMP members that received court order to bring their police notes. They had them during discovery. They arrive at trial. Oh, we lost our notes. Oh, the judge. Oh no, you lost your note. Oh yes. I empty my office. I think I left a box with the police notes about Operation Deception, and it all disappeared. And the judge agreed to that. So this is what I'm up against, and in the same way, you guys as reporter, you will be up against situations like this. As a lawyer, even you will be up against situation like this. You will find it frustrating, but never give up. Never give up, because, like I said, when it comes down to human right and to ensure that future generation will have a fair justice system, it's worth fighting for, as much for you guys in your case, whatever whatever work you'll decide to do. That's how I look at it. Next,
I have a question.
go ahead.
So I was just wondering, after like all the events and like being in jail and stuff, like did it ever occur to you to just like not come back, like just go somewhere else, like after like knowing that your own government failed you?
Mhm. Yes, what could I say? It's good to be home after 8.5 years in Thailand, but to tell you the truth, I'm ashamed of this government and the one prior to that. Since Brian Merlone in '89 and Joe Clark, who wrote to my mom and told my mom, forget about your son, he'll die over there. Yeah, I'm happy to be in Canada. I'm happy to be Canadian. I'm happy to be Quebecers, to be a French Canadian.
Yeah.
But I'm ashamed of what occurred, not only in this case, even through the last few months with the First Nation, with the discovery of mass graves, to see that it took so long before someone in Ottawa, except our prime minister's got pretty easy tears coming down to his eyes every time a situation like this happened. But these are always empty words. And you, as young people, you're the next generation. You're the one who will be able to, at some point, to decide who do you really want to have to represent you as a prime minister, as a deputy. You want people who have spine. I mean, all we have here are politicians who don't have no courage at all. More than that, I wrote letters to Trudeau. I wrote letters to all the ministers before. Whatever, if it's prime minister, justice minister, public safety minister, I wrote to them all. You can read my letters on my website. You'll see them in the section menu, in the section documents. I wrote to all of them. And David Lametti, just like Bill Blair and all the others before under the Harper government, they don't even have the wit to acknowledge receipt of my recommended letter to their attention. It costs me like $15 every time I send them a recommended letter with signature, and they don't even dare acknowledging receipt of them, because I know why. Because they cannot answer. Because in my last letter, I told David Lametti, I says, do you agree with the content of the analysis of Flanagan's death? These are all the Attorney General's document, RCMP document. It's not my testimony. It's only their document and their testimonies. So they cannot disagree with it. It's testimony. These are all testimonies on the road, and RCMP documents find through their whole file. And all I asked him was, do you agree with this? He cannot answer. Fine. I wrote another letter. And I said, Mr. Lametti, the reason why you cannot answer me is that if you agree with the content of this document, that means that you agree that the RCMP lied about the circumstances surrounding the death of their colleague. And if you do that, that means that you agree, you admit that judges of the court here in Canada closed their eyes to all this. So they are in a pretty bad spot, but I'm confident with the documentary that we'll be doing that the truth will explode at some point. I'm working on several things right now, and now Amnesty International, I'll be meeting the president shortly. Life is well done in some ways, because the guy who played my role in the movie Target #1, his dad used to be president for Amnesty International. and he's a lawyer too. He's not practicing anymore. He's got a Airbnb by the ocean in Gaspesia, but he decided to contact Amnesty International, and they want to support my petition to David Lamity for a public inquiry. Once I got that insurance, then I will move my other piece. It's just like a big chess game, and a long one. It's been 30 years I'm not playing the same game. But I'm not giving up. Even if Ottawa's have all the powers that they have and all the money that they have, the truth remains the truth. And I know once it will come out and that the Canadian public will find out that the RCMP lied about the death of their colleague and that the court closed their eyes to it, there will be a big chain reaction. It will have some kind of snowball effect at some point. This is why that's the thing I'm counting on right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next.
I have a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, it's okay for sure.
Who do you reckon was the individual who did shoot Flanagan?
Barry Bennett.
Barry Bennett? Okay.
Yeah, he's the one who was fighting in the back of the truck with the Thai people during the transaction, and the truck took off. And according to the Thais, because here I wasn't allowed to say that before the court because it was hearsay. Because myself, I was arrested and down the ditch when I heard the gunshot, and we saw the truck stopping in the dark, and after that, the truck started moving again. And with regard to these events, it's like I said before. Problem is that that's the words of the RCMP against mine, and there's nobody that can do that we can perform an autopsy. That's why it took me so long to put all the ingredients together, including all their testimonies before the court on the road, to be able to catch them in their own lies. But when you see the document on my website, you'll see how much research there is in there. In the same way as for my book, all the documents that were used for my book are on my website. Everything is detailed and ordered by year 89 until 97. I mean, the internet is good for that because it now allows people to see the evidence by themselves. And just imagine the scandal that will occur if the Canadian public really find out that the RCMP lied about Flanagan's death. Will there be a lawsuit by the Flanagan family against the RCMP and the Canadian government for 100 million because they lied to them? That's a scenario that is coming up once the truth will come out. But the Flanagan family don't want to talk to me. They're still calling me a bastard and all kinds of names you wouldn't imagine. If you really, if you have time, what I will suggest you on my website, there's a link to go to the podcast called Murder Was the Case. It's from Dr. Lee Miller from Carleton University. I got 12 episodes. I got like over 10 hours with him. You have the whole story from the beginning to the end with that criminologist asking me questions. And he also looked at Flanagan's death, the old document, and he couldn't believe it. Because that guy is something. Dr. Lee Miller is a piece of work, believe me. He already worked on several cold cases, and he managed to get Robert Baltovich being innocented in Toronto a few years ago. And I got people like this now on my side, and I'm trying to get some more people. My next step is to get in touch with Eugene Licio at Toronto University. That guy is the director for the Department of Crime Scene, 3D crime scene reenactment. And I want to take the Flanagan's document and to recreate the scenes taken from the testimonies given by the RCMP. As it is, we got like 12, 14 different versions of Flanagan's death. Even the official version of the Royal Inquiry in Thailand is different than the official version of Flanagan's death in Canada. Try to understand. I still don't understand. But this is political. This is controversial, and you're gonna need people with a lot of courage, like I said, and determination to really make sure that the truth is exposed from A to Z, to make a big cleanup, even at the RCMP Public Complaint Commission as well, because I got in touch with, because they have a new name now, and they basically told me to get lost. And it's not easy, but I don't give up. I'm not giving up, and this is what I'm expecting from you once you got your degree, once you start working as a reporter or as a lawyer. Don't give up. It will speak in your favor in the end, because people will see that you don't give up, in the same way that people realize over the years that there was no one like Victor Malarek in Canada when it came down to expose the truth, because that guy didn't stop at anything. I mean, he was like a bulldozer. But remain polite. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Is there another question?
Maybe I just have a question kind of related to that documentary that you're doing.
Yeah.
Where do you, because it's such a controversial subject, have you thought about where it's going to end up being viewed? Like where it'll be accessible through?
But myself, what I'm aiming at right now with the Justice Minister is that if the petition is made, I'm asking the Justice Minister to send my case before the Supreme Court, because he's got the power to do that. And I don't want to go through 696.2 of the criminal code, to go through a whole petition like they did in many other cases. I want that petition being conducted by Amnesty International. The thing that I'm sorry about, and I'm very, very deceived in Canada, is that organization like Innocent Project, they don't want to touch my case either. Wrongful Association Against the Wrongful Conviction, they don't want to touch my case either. You know why? Same thing with Canadian Civil Liberties, BC Civil Liberties, because most of these groups, when you look at the Treasury Board of all these groups, most of the people on the board are all politicians that used to be in Ottawa at the federal level, including Erwin Cutler. And that guy, I wrote him in the past. No, they don't want to touch my case. They give me for reason it's because my case happened in Thailand. Yes, perhaps, but the violation of my rights started here. But they use for reason that no, they cannot do anything for me, and that angered me a lot. It did anger me for some time, but I told myself, oh, it's only another hurdle to go over, and from knocking on every door, at some point someone will open the right one for me. And the movie allowed me to give me access to more people a lot now that I got something behind me. I got a movie, I got documentaries, I got a book. I can stand up for myself and speak about it. But it's not easy, because I feel alone. Many, many, many times there's not many people. Just like when you're writing a book, it's a lonely process. It's the same thing if ever you do your master or your doctorate and you have to write your thesis. It's a long process. You're on your own and you're in your bubble. You read it on, I'm going to take that out, I'm going to start again. And it's a long process. But just like this, my book, when I wrote it, at some point, I told Victor, I called Victor Malarek in Toronto, and I told him, I said, Victor, I'm not a writer. I cannot write a book. And he started giving me shit. And he started challenging me that, yes, you can do it. Yes. Just kick my ass. And I did. I'm proud, because I'm a forest ranger from trade. I mean, I went to university a couple of years. I never completed university. And I moved to BC after that. And I lived in BC for many years. I worked in the forest and on construction over there. But I'm proud, even if the conditions were not ideal for over the last year since the pandemic. But it's done. And now I'm going on to another project to convince everyone that the fight that I'm leading for so many years is worth it something, and I haven't done that for nothing. I even had a guy not long ago wrote me through my website. That guy did get my book and he read my book, and he was about to commit suicide when he got my book. He was about to hang himself, and he wrote me, and he says, "You just saved my life," and he told me all about it. He had the fucking rope in his hand, was ready to do it, and he got my book, and he wrote me to thank me to save his life. So yeah, I think I can make a difference. I even had people in Venezuela. I even had people in Costa Rica and other countries who've been writing me about my book and about the movie, and everything has been so positive. And many people did tell me that it helped them to go through what they were going through at the time. They were going through phases of misery and troubles and stuff like that, and by reading my book, it helped them just to get over that. And so yes, I feel that my fight, as much as everything that I've done, is worth doing because I'm doing it for the right reason. And when people are telling you things like that, that you save their life, it counts a lot. It does. Anyone? Yeah. If you have another question, go ahead.
Victor, I kind of sense we're coming to an end, and I want to thank you with one last question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, you've been very generous. You've been very generous with your time and very generous with your life, with telling us all these personal details about this. So I want to thank you for that generosity today. And
Oh, it's a pleasure. Believe me, pleasure's for me.
yeah,
I told you this weekend when I have a chance to talk to university students, it's just like it gets. I feel much younger. I feel much younger. So I like discussing these things, and perhaps we will do it again. And just make sure, don't be shy to ask questions, because as reporters, that's the thing you will be asked to do on a daily basis. So if ever I have to talk with you again, guys, come up with a list of questions. Then don't worry, there's no question I won't answer. I don't have anything to hide, and as if it can help you to go through your studies and to encourage you, I'll be happy to do that anytime. Just tell me and I'll be there.
Alain, I'm going to take you up on that invitation to invite you to another class in another term. But for today, let me just finish by thanking you from all the generosity of your spirit that you've shown. And so I have one last question for you, and that is, given this long fight you've had, what do you need in your life for final closure and a final sense of vindication? What is it that would finally give you closure? And if you had closure after all these years of fighting, what would you do next in your life? Alain?
To find closure for me would be to have my case being heard before the Supreme Court. But it might be very hard because probably the judges will try to protect Justice Wagner as well. But nevertheless, and I just want the truth to come out. And if the petition goes out as we wish with Amnesty International, I'm not worried that there are going to be tens of thousands of names and that the minister will have to open an inquiry in the same way as it happened with Maher Arar. That Justice O'Connor made a long investigation. I had the report here. It's like 1,800 pages. That was a real inquiry. And Maher was vindicated in the end. It's not even a matter of money because myself, I'm poor. I mean, I don't have money. I don't need much to be happy. I have my garden up country. I grow my own vegetables. I got my chickens. I got my own eggs. So I don't need much to be happy. But in the end, all I want is for the truth to come out. And once this is settled, I just want to go back up country and get myself new dogs because my pets passed away a couple of years ago. I had big dogs, 150 pounds. I like big dogs. I just want to go back up country and have new dogs and just spend my life just relaxing up country and spend some time also with my friends and family. Because when you're fighting like I've been fighting for so many years, it's not always easy to keep your friends. Some people get tired to hear about certain things, but like many saw last year when the movie and the book came out, they all realized that I did not do all this for nothing. Now, all I hope for is that the truth comes out, that my case will be heard at some point. And if it's settled, that settlement will allow me just to pursue new projects, because I have plenty of new projects like the tele series that I'm planning to do in the next couple of years. And I want to write other books probably, because it's probably the things I like the most doing. So I'm not I'm not looking for fireworks or anything like this. And after everything I've been through, I'm tired. I just like to, like I said, to be up country and just relax and think of other things than politics and corruptions and this whole case that it's 32 years this year that it follows me. 33 years that will be on February 19th to next year. It'll be 33 years. And I hope to achieve, like I said, just to expose the truth. I've been called a murderer. I've been called all kinds of things, and I did none of these things. And I want to also expose the media in some ways as they are. Why don't they have the courage to talk about subject of matter of interest? It's not even matter of public interest at this point. It's matter of public order. When you have judges closing their eyes to RCMP members lying about the death of their colleagues. But I'm looking for a simpler life, and if I could just be writing and growing my vegetables and picking up my eggs for years to come, I'll be happy. I don't need more than that. I live with so many little things. I don't have any luxuries or anything. I live with less than $10,000 a year, and I have everything I want. So even if I had millions, that might help to take decision on maybe a few things. But will that change my life? I doubt it very much. Not at 62. When you're 20 or 30 and you become millionaire, that might be something else. But when you're 60 something, your wisdom has rules over everything. It's my health as well. After 32 years of fighting this, I've been through a lot, and I think I need some rest a little bit. So I'll see how it goes. But with young people like your students and teachers like you, I believe that if the communication is right, there is a way to make sure that the truth will come out in this whole story. And I hope your student will take the time to write me through my website if they have other question, and if I can get their email as well, I'll be able to inform them about what's coming up, and if there is a public inquiry, to invite them to sign that petition and to have all their friends and even your colleague as teacher to sign it. That's pretty much what I'm aiming at for the next year. I'll be concentrating on this and try to close up the second book and to shrink it a little bit, because 1,200 pages is a lot of material, but each page is important, so it's hard to get everything out of it. So I will need some help because I'm not a writer as such, but I will go get the collaboration that I need to complete that in the weeks and months to come. And next year I should be able to publish it. That's pretty much what I'm aiming at. And it was very kind of you to have me today and to be able to talk to all of you guys.